Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. President Trump attended a private fundraiser this evening after wrapping up a roundtable on police reform in Dallas. The president says he's working on an executive order on law enforcement. Meanwhile, Congress is putting forth its own proposals this week. Skylar Henry's at the White House with more.
During a roundtable discussion in Dallas, President Trump vowed to take executive action on police funding and use of force.
We must invest more energy and resources in police training and recruiting and community engagement. We have to respect our police. We have to take care of our police.
Ahead of the president's trip, his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, accused him of avoiding meaningful conversations on race and dividing the country.
When he speaks and gives credibility to these racist folks out there, he breathes out, they come out from under the rocks.
We will not rest until the changes are made.
House Democrats announced their massive police reform proposal earlier this week, and Senate Republicans, led by South Carolina's Tim Scott, are expected to unveil theirs soon.
The ongoing protests have reignited debate about whether 10 U.S. Army bases named for Confederate leaders should be renamed.
President Trump doubled down on his opposition, tweeting Thursday, "Those that deny their history are doomed to repeat it." But military leaders and even some congressional Republicans say they're open to it.
If we're going to have a basis throughout the United States, I think it should be with the names of individuals who fought for our country.
Meanwhile, in a video message to military students, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, expressed regret for accompanying President Trump to St. John's Church last week.
That sparked a national debate about the role of the military in civil society. I should not have been there.
The administration received harsh criticism after federal officers cleared peaceful protesters from Lafayette Square ahead of that walk. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
Well, President Trump announced he'll hold his first post-coronavirus campaign rally next Friday, June 19th. The president getting backlash over that date, also known as Juneteenth, which is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the U.S. Attendees who RSVP are being asked to acknowledge the risk of possible COVID-19 exposure. Well, several police officers searching for the suspect in yesterday's ambush of an officer at a police station in California have been wounded, and the suspect is now reportedly dead. The manhunt began after Deputy Richard Dreyfuss was shot in the face outside that police station. Police believe the suspect also shot and killed a man whose body was found near an Amtrak station in the city. Police cornered the suspect, a 26-year-old man, today, shot and killed him after he began shooting at officers. The deputy shot yesterday is in guarded condition. No word on the extent of those hurt today. Well, after the Justice for George Floyd rally this weekend, community leaders in Billings came together tonight. The goal is to bring people with different points of view together to find solutions. Q2's David J. has more on tonight's roundtable discussion. David?
Russ, they called it Walk With Me from Racial Injustice and Prejudice to Unity. A diverse community group was invited tonight.
I need to be here. I will be here. I mean, it's necessary. My absence here would have spoken volumes of anything that I may or may not say here tonight. So these are things that we engage.
Billings Police Chief Rich St. John talked about being part of the discussion with law enforcement, a focal point around the country. He was one of 9 panelists. The facilitator says it's about building bridges of communication to help see someone else's side. He wanted people to be honest and frank and called it a no judgment zone.
We needed to have liberal in, we needed to have the conservative in, we needed to have our police chief in there so that he could let us know from his end. Anyone that we're talking about or they are the subject of our conversations, they need to be in that room on that conversation. We need not be talking about them, we need to be talking with them. These people are very courageous. So many times you hear the phrase, we need to start the conversation. We need to start the conversation. It's usually after something bad has happened. Tonight they're starting that conversation and they're getting into it, and we're going to have a great result.
Jeffrey Johnson says he expects to hold 2 more sessions with the goal of meaningful solutions to racial injustice, bias, and prejudice. Russ?
All right, thank you, David. Well, the latest unemployment numbers are out with some encouraging signs, but millions are still without work. 1.5 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. Layoffs remain historically high, but the downward trend in claims continues. The Federal Reserve says it will take time for the U.S. economy to recover from the pandemic, predicting unemployment will continue to fall but finish the year above 9%, of course, much higher than the 3.5% rate that we saw before the pandemic started. In other economic news, the Dow lost 1,800 points today over concerns about the economic recovery and rising COVID cases. All right, turning to Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. And Bob, with the heat wave approaching, you've got some good advice on how to keep your cool.
It's coming in tomorrow for sure, so let me show you what's happening. We go to this graphic, and of course we got the cool air on us now, but guess what? The heat starting in the south, and it's going to be expanding all the way up into Montana and Billings and obviously across much of the country, so it's going to be very hot. So here's some things to think about in the next 24 to 48 hours. Just slow down. Dress for summer, well, you know, in shorts and cotton wear. Watch what you eat, nothing really heavy. Drink plenty of water, stay out of direct sunlight, and also get it to air-conditioned places as fast as you can or as often as you can. And don't forget to don't leave the kids in the car or pets in the car, because solar radiation, it's shortwave radiation, shines through the glass. Then it turns into long-wave radiation as a form of heat and gets trapped in the car. And because of that, here's what happens. Temperature outside might be 90 degrees, but it'll feel like 124 degrees inside the car in just as little as 30 minutes. So please, don't leave the kids and the pets in the cars the next 24 to 48 hours. Russ?
All right, good advice. Thank you, Bob. The Montana Department of Corrections may now have its first 2 cases of COVID-19 in a secured facility. 2 inmates at Montana Women's Prison here in Billings tested presumed positive for the virus Tuesday. The inmates' samples were transported to the state lab for confirmation. The Montana DOC is conducting sentinel testing of those who don't demonstrate active symptoms. The prison has implemented quarantine and isolation procedures. Riverstone Health is helping with contact tracing tied to the presumptive positive cases. Well, after receiving the results, the department tested all 194 inmates and 48 staff members there at Women's Prison. In addition to the 2 cases at the Women's Prison, Custer County reported its first confirmed case of COVID-19 today. That individual is now in isolation, and Bighorn County has added another positive case. We're also told that man is in his 30s and is now in the hospital. The man does have symptoms, and his case is not known to be associated with other clusters in Bighorn County. There are now 61 active cases across the state, and 8 people are in the hospital. But one of the governor's plans as more tourists make their way into Montana is to ramp up community testing in destination areas, and that includes Carbon County. Community testing will take place this Friday and Saturday in Red Lodge for anyone who wants to be tested, and they want to get as many people out as possible. It's a kickoff to the surveillance testing that they're going to be doing weekly for a percentage of frontline workers in the Red Lodge area. That would include people who work in restaurants and some other businesses, to get a representative sample as the summer goes on and more tourists come to town.
As the summer begins and as tourists come to this area, we'll be able to adapt to where are infections happening. Are they happening in restaurants? Are they happening during some of our summer events? Are they happening in grocery stores? It'll enable us to kind of look at kind of micro areas in our community and possibly make small mitigation, toggling our mitigation to these areas, as opposed to just shutting down, large parts of our economy.
The community drive-through testing to take place tomorrow, also Saturday from 9 in the morning to 3 p.m. at the Red Lodge High School parking lot. That's on Chambers Avenue. They're encouraging all permanent and summer residents in Carbon County to attend, and they're using the self-swab technique, where you just basically swab the front of your nose with a Q-tip, so it's quick and painless, and it'll give health officials a lot of important information that they hope will show how prevalent COVID-19 is there in Carbon County. All right, still to come on tonight's 10 o'clock news. Federal money is rolling into Montana hospitals, but it's failing to live up to its original promise. We'll have more on that. And in sports, a former national champion with the Bobcats now helping to manage today's unrest on the streets of California. Scott catches up with Hall of Famer Derek Abell in just a bit.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.